Hey everyone, it is Juice here. The weapon banner is a scam in disguise. We all know this, and it would be wise for all free-to-plays to steer clear of it. However, not all 5-star weapons are created equal, and there's quite a few of them which I think are especially valuable for a free-to-play account to own, should you ever take the risk of said banner. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. Now, before I get into my top 5 list, I should list the conditions that we'll be working with. Does the weapon have good crit rate and damage? How about base attack? We need to look at the raw stats. Second, is the passive really niche or applicable to many characters? If it works on many, then how many and to what effectiveness? 3. Is the increase offered by the weapon big enough to justify using over a free option? Is it easily replaceable with a craftable for performance that is still similar? And then 4. How about weapon type? Not all types are created equal. A decent 5-star sword is going to be better than an outstanding 5-star claymore. Then some bonus points. 5. Has it had good banners historically that a free-to-play would realistically pull on? And then 6. How good is it on its respective characters? 6 is usually the most important in my opinion, but we're looking at these weapons from an account-wide perspective. We'll also have a conversation regarding how I think the weapon will age into the future, and I'll also include some honorable mentions, weapons that I personally think are quite good but are just a bit too niche and end up missing the mark ever so slightly. Please do note that at the end of the day, this is all my opinion and you don't have to agree with anything said here, but I do stand by the fact that if you're a free-to-play and end up with one or more of these weapons on your account, you will be absolutely set. We're gonna go from least best to absolute best, with 5 being the lowest and 1 being the highest. Okay, that's enough. Let's really begin. Now, let's start with Primordial Jade Cutter. It's really flexible, and while the base attack may only be fine, it's got a massive crit rate main stat, which is super useful for plenty of sword units. While the HP is useless if you have 20,000 HP, that's still a 240 flat attack buff based on the conversion of the weapon at R1. So even non-HP scalers get a tidy buff out of it. Now, how many of the swords can use it? Literally every single one. It can compete with Foliar in AoE, as Foliar Incision has a max number of trigger counts, which will max out fast in AoE, unlike Page AC, which has a totally unconditional passive. And while the flat attack is useless for Arena, the HP percent is very nice. It helps her be easier to build, especially with all that crit rate. You can focus in more on energy recharge substat. The likes of Kaching also appreciates Primordial Jade Cutter. Xingqiu can also do some funny vaporized things with Primordial Jade Cutter. It's one of his best insults for damage. While crit rate is a bit annoying to build on Clorinde, it is doable if you really focus in on crit damage substat artifacts. A similar situation applies to Ayaka. It's truly nice because every sword character appreciates its stats one way or another, whether that be the HP or the flat attack. Is it good enough to justify using over the free picks? Yes, absolutely. For example, it's on par with Foliar Incision for a Hyphem. It's a lot better than Kageyuchi on Ayaka despite its huge crit rate. It's better than Finale on Clorinde. It does indeed outperform those free craftables. It's also a sword. Really good weapon type, as we have plenty of strong sword DPSs who can utilize it well. Now, Page AC doesn't really have a respective character, unless you want that to be Kaching, in which case, yes, Page AC is amazing. So let's focus on its banners historically speaking. Its last banner was in 3.1, featuring during the Nilou and Albedo run, which back then, that was a pretty balls banner, but now that we have Farina, that's not too bad. Key of Caution suit is very good on her, not to mention that Nilou herself is very good. In 2.5, being paired with Kagura isn't great. It's a good weapon, but being a DPS catalyst is not amazing, and being paired in 2.1 with Moonglow is straight up garbage even to this day. I remember people complaining about how bad that weapon banner was even back then. And being paired with Page AWS was quite a saving grace back in 1.2, but that was way back when, so it doesn't really matter anymore. Historically, yes, Page AC's banners have been garbage, and I think it's probably returning on Chronicled Wish most likely. This doesn't deal break the weapon for me because it's just so freaking flexible, and future-wise, I think that since it has such a universal everyman stat spread, it'll only continue to get better. Then we have Staff of Homa. Ah yes, the polearm. Super high base attack, super high crit damage, and while it does have a conditional part of its passive, it also has an unconditional part of it. it. Homa is an everyman polearm. It is definitively best in slot on Hu Tao, and while I think that R5 Dragonsbane is amazing as a substitute, not everyone will have that. Staff of the Scarlet Sands is on par with Homa in Farina teams though. It's also best in slot on Xiao, alongside Primordial, Jade, Winged Spear. Go check out my most recently uploaded Xiao guide if you want the specifics on why I think that Homa is equal to Primordial Jade. It's not best in slots on any other units, but what it is a high performer compared to options on every DPS polearm that is usually a lot higher than free-to-play picks. For example, Arlecchino. Funnily enough, she has low HP a lot, so Arla might situationally take advantage of the full passive. Xiangling can use it as well, but Staff of the Scarlet Sands is better for her. As I said, however, this polearm is a lot more flexible. Just make sure that you have energy recharge though. DPS Raiden can use Staff of Homa, same situation as Xiangling, but it's not best in slot. However, it will be better than free-to-play choices. Rosaria uses it quite well, and the base attack is alright, so Shenhe can also enjoy it. Wasted crit though. DPS Zhongli can also use it. Sino can use it. You get the point. Every polearm that does damage potentially can use it. With free options, yes, it beats out others on most of these polearms, but it's worth noting that we have a bunch of valuable polearms. EAG, Catch. So that makes pulling Staff of Homa for specifically Xiangling or Raiden a bit redundant, getting Golfing instead. Polearm is a great weapon type because some of Genshin Impact's most competitive DPSs are polearms. Arlecchino, Xiao, and we have some other solid ones like Hu Tao. Yes, it's amazing on Hu Tao. I'd say the only situation where it's beaten by Staff of the Scarlet Sands is in a Xian Yun Plunge Vape team, because your Tao will usually be above 50% HP, so she can't take advantage of her full Staff of the Scarlet Sands passive. Historically, it's had very good banners. 1.3 was a bit of a dud, but 2.2 and 3.4 were undeniably incredible. 4.1 was also great because Neuvillette is a great DPS, and its weapon is amazing for him. As for his future, should remain a good pull. Every polearm has something to gain from it. It's extremely future-proof if the weapon surviving for over 3 years was not enough of an indicator. Next up is Aqua Simulacra and Polar Star, but I'm gonna focus on Aqua first, then move on to Polar Star. Okay, so while the base attack is just okay, holy crit damage! 16% HP may not be that universal, but 20% damage increase absolutely is. Though do consider that the range of that passive is very small, so it depends on who you are in terms of whether you can take advantage of that passive or not. Characters who can enjoy this include Child, who loves it actually, Yelan herself of course, Melt Ganyu since you will usually have a shielder in that team, and up close Lenny, which is hard to play, but you can pull it off. Though, with a shielder, you can sacrifice range if you want that passive to work for everyone. The HP is very welcome on Yelan. Also, fun fact you may have forgotten, Ganyu's skill taunt scales on HP. Very tiny bonus, but it is there. Yes, it is a lot better than free options on all characters it works on, and we have some really strong bow users, so being a bow is quite amazing. Yelan herself is literally within top 5 meta, and the fact that it's her best in slot shoots it so high in value. Linny is also really strong, and him being able to use it is great. The only bow who doesn't love Aqua is Yoimiya, and even then, the crit stick is solid. It's amazing on Yelan, as I've already said, and yes, she does have quite good free-to-play options, but this is still really good on her. Every single one of her runs has had a solid weapon banner in my opinion, and it should age well because HP scalers are getting more common now, yet they haven't crept into the bow niche yet. Now for Ginger Man's signature. Let's not ignore that base attack and high crit rate stat. The burst and skill damage increase is amazing. 12% is no laughing matter at R1. It says 15% here because this is R2, but at R1, it will be 12%. Big attack percent from the passive, and it's also not that hard to trigger. Much like Aqua, everybody can use it, even Yelan herself, because you can just ignore the attack percent part of the passive. The value here is off the charts. What else can truly be said? Of course it's amazing on Child, but so is every 5-star bow under the sun on this guy, let's be honest. Its first banner sucked, Memory of Dust the Goat. Being with Kagura was okay, and Vortex Vanquisher... yeah, its banners sucked historically. But remember all those positive points that I just stated. Saying that it's not that big of a deal for a free-to-play account would just be disingenuous. It'll age beautifully into the future, though if we get more HP scalers, it could fall off over time and lose to Aqua flat out. First off, obligatory Triple Crown Venti Flex. Second off, Elegy for the End. The base attack is high, but for a support weapon, that doesn't really matter. The ER is nice though. The real value of this choice is not only in the ER, but the passive. Buffing Menace. This makes it a great pick for any bow support. Okay, so I know what you're all thinking. Dude, I don't care if this works on my Goro. Oh, well, let me tell you something. It is a really nice support Yelan pick. She wants her ER a lot, and her damage doesn't suffer if you're running for Emblem. It's not like running Favonius would be any better for her damage, so Elegy is really nice for her buffing capabilities. Think providing Elemental Mastery for double Hydro Tau. It literally expands what Yelan can do. Xiao is also a great DPS at the minute, and Elegy is really good on Farazan. And dude, even Goro is not that bad. Remember that Noelle exists, and that although Navia doesn't defense scale, Goro has other buffs like crit and C4 mild heals, and if you're running a couple of Geos, Goro can even give Geo damage. Kujo Sara also has gained value with Clorinde's release, and she loves Elegy, and so do her teams. Fischl can use Elegy. Sure, the ER isn't all that needed, but buffing Fischl is a relevant playstyle. Elegy Amber, it's niche, but we all know this one. And of course, it's good on Cutie Patootie Venti himself. And might I remind you that Scaramouche and Venti is a team. Support Ganyu as well if you're into Mono Cryo. That's not that big of a deal, I just thought I'd throw it in there because I like the team. Of course it's amazing on my beloved Venti, but if I'm being honest, Yelan, Farazan, and Kujo Sara are the ones carrying the value of this choice. It tends to have very good banners as well, which is worth noting. Staff of Homa Elegy anyone? Staff of the Scarlet Sands Elegy anyone? 1.4 was its only real dud. Now for honorable mentions. Light of Foliar Incision. Extremely high crit damage value, and the base attack is decent. Not huge, but it's solid. And how about its passive? Well, it's a little niche compared to its main competitor, Primordial Jade Cutter, and the straight crit rate increase down here, it's a cool little bit of CV. It's not a big deal though. It boosts normal attack and skill damage based on EM, so obviously best in slot for Alhaitham, which is a big deal since he's one of the strongest sword characters, but once again, like I mentioned earlier, Primordial is very competitive with that. And how applicable is it on others? It's actually very solid on recently released sword DPS Clorinde. It's a great weapon type, and it will be competent on most sword characters. It's honorable because it was honestly hard to choose between Primordial Jade Cutter or Foliar for the list. But because Primordial is more flexible, and the fact that PGC can compete with it on the respective character that it was made for, it didn't quite make the top 5 list. Though, if you want it, the time is now. The weapon banner of 4.7 is pretty good for sword enjoyers. Then, next honorable mention, Uraku Misugiri. Holy crit damage, first of all, and now I'm wondering, why did Uraku land this spot? Simple. The normal attack and skill damage is actually very amazing, and it competes with Light of Foliar Incision on Alhaitham in a spread team with Zhongli, so this makes it surprisingly competitive on a good amount of sword users. Almost every sword DPS uses normal attacks or skill damage or some kind of mix of the both, but the rest of its passive is geo-locked, yikes. Though Zhongli is a flexible universal geo character, so it's not that hard to unlock the rest of this weapon's potential. Good weapon type as well. This pick honestly has a lot going for it. Also, I just personally think it looks really cool and it looks nice on Chiori. It's literally Chiori's best in slot by a landslide, so it qualifies there. And it had a decent debut banner with a decent partner. Speaking of its partner, I'm gonna focus primarily on Redhorn here. However, do know that Beacon of the Ritzy is in the same spot. Okay, holy crit damage once again, obviously a niche passive built for Ito, and Beacon has plenty of nice crit rate. Main issue as to why it didn't make the list? Serpent Spine. Though this is a video about weapons for free-to-plays, and Battle Pass does not concern free-to-plays. So what then? Weapon type. Being a good Claymore is... okay, it's gotten better thanks to Diluc and Gaming Plunge, but they have other competitive 4-star options. Shootman Diluc can use freaking Rain Slasher. Yes, it's good on Ito, but is that much of an accomplishment? And Beacon is pretty much good on every Claymore, but... okay. It's still undeniably good, so I wanted to mention it. I also think that Staff of the Scarlet Sands is a must mention, because there's actually a fair share of people who consider this weapon to be better than Staff of Homa. It has really nice crit rate, and sure, the base attack is a bit lower, however, this is really nice for elemental mastery scaling characters, so this is honestly quite good on a lot of units. Now, it's below Staff of Homa because I find Staff of Homa to be a little less conditional than this. However, this this very well could have made it on the list, and I feel like it just depends on who you are. Great weapon, definitely wanted to mention it. It was also paired with Elegy of the End once, so it's had historically decent banners. Also, it's great on its respective unit of Cyno. And then number 1. We all saw it coming, man. Mistsplitter Reforged. The magnum opus of 5-star weapons. Amazing base attack, amazing crit damage, and the passive is where it flourishes. You get a ton of damage bonus percent, which is not only really strong, but really universal. Yes, on Alhaitham it's equal to Harbinger of Dawn, but it's nowhere near as conditional as Harbinger of Dawn. Really good for Clorinde. Farina can use it too, though she won't get the full passive. Amazing on Kaching. Are you starting to see a pattern here? It's literally good on every sword. Really good on pretty much anyone you can think of, and it's so good on Ayaka by a landslide. Kageuchi is okay, but this is so much better damage-wise. You cannot deny the sheer prowess this weapon has. Not only that, but it is a sword. Imagine we got a Polar in this good. How about its banners? Is it achievable for free-to-play? A 2.0 exists. 2.6 was a dead banner, and was also the Eternal Ayaka era, funnily enough, and it finally had a decent banner in 3.5 with Calamity Queller. Damage bonus percent is such a good stat that I think it will continue to age really well. Yes, its banners have proven to be risky, but you will not regret owning this weapon the more sword DPSs that come out, as you'll soon come to realize just how flexible this pick really is. And there you have it, guys, the top 5 best free-to-play 5-star weapons based on account value. Know that these are all based on the conditions I said at the start of the video, and if you're a free-to-play that totally disagrees, let me know down below in the comments, or even consider joining my Discord so we can all have a more thorough discussion about it. Perhaps some of this was no surprise at all to some of you, with other picks being more outlandish, but I'm confident in the fact that if you're a free-to-play that ends up with anything on this list, you will be one happy camper. Hopefully this video is able to tell you the top 5 best free-to-play weapons in Genshin Impact. This has been Juice, signing out, and a friendly reminder to all of you that the fish weapon has a 6-star design.